Hey, what's up guys? It's John, and this is the final tutorial to the Space Shooter series. In this tutorial, guys, we're going to finish up the entire game, and when finished, you will have a product that looks like this. Just starting out, guys, you'll notice that in the lower left, we have lives, our score, we have a time and a timer. I'll explain all of that in the tutorial, and this is what we're going to have. When you go and start it, we also have a GUI function in here. And actually the GUI function is not showing right now. 1 second. Oh, didn't attach it. Okay, there you go. Alright, see that? It says score 0, lives 3. When you get hit, you disappear for a little. Lives 2, you can get 100 points. It's 50 points per enemy. And that's it. When you die, if you get hit, bam, 0. Also, that one's looping. But when an enemy collides with you, you and the enemy both die. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and delete all the scripts so we can do this 100% from scratch. Alright guys, so the first minute and 30 of the video shows you what we're going to be doing. I think I pretty much removed all the scripts that were needed. If you just go ahead and run it right now, this is what we should currently have. I can destroy the game object. And actually, let me just clone a few more enemies in there. And now if it hits me, I die. But, I don't respond or anything like that. So how do we respond? There's no scorekeeping. There's no player lives. And actually, if you'll notice, I just noticed this now actually. Look what happens when your laser doesn't explode. Also, when the enemy collides with you, it goes right through you. It doesn't actually explode or anything like that. So we want both the enemy and the player to collide and explode or disappear. Okay, so what do we have to do? Let's start with the player lives. It's probably going to be the easiest one to do. Go and open up your scripts, guys. You're in your player scripts. Go ahead and declare a variable player lives. Alright, and yeah, go ahead and declare a variable player lives. Okay, so I shouldn't have to tell you how to do that. Make a variable player lives, and then what you want to do is set that lives to X amount of lives. How many lives do you want? Do you want 1 life per game? Maybe you want 3. I usually set mine to 3. So you create a variable and name that variable player lives and set it equal to 3. Alright, and then what you want to do is you want to go down to your collision or your on trigger enter method, and remember now this line here says that if the game object enemy collides with the player object, destroy player. Okay, now we have that set down, but what else do we want to do now? We have lives, so we want to deduct lives. This isn't a fundamentals to learning exercise, guys, so you should know how to deduct and add units. So what you would do is, before it destroys it, what do you want to do, guys? You want to take the variable player lives, which should be like, player lives if you named it that, and then you want to increment it or de-increment it, decrease it. So you would do minus minus, and that basically says, okay, you have 3 lives, subtract, now you have 2 lives. Alright, and it destroys the game object. But now, if you just go ahead and run that, guys, it's going to run, you're going to have 2 lives, but then your game object isn't going to respond. So what you need to do is, you need to figure out, okay, so I want it to take away lives by doing this. So you have, here, let me just go and do this for the sake of it. Give me 1 second. So you have player lives, right? Player, int player lives. You can do yours public or private variable, it doesn't matter. You should probably do it public so we can watch it in the inspector. Player lives equal 3, right? So what we have here is player lives equal 3. You come down to here. If it collides with the enemy, we want the player lives to what? De-increment. So now it's going to be 2. But we don't want it to destroy unless we have no lives. Does that make sense? So what you need to do is you need to create a simple if statement. Go ahead and create an if statement where if, let's see, if player lives is less than 1, destroy the object. 1. Here, if player lives is less than 1, then destroy. Okay? So go ahead and type that method in. And once you've gone ahead and do this, I'm actually not going to do any code for this. I'm going to walk you guys through it, and you guys are going to do it, so there's no copy and paste here. Okay, so once we have that, you're going to go and test it. We have our player lives, and basically, you can go over here, hit play, check in your inspector, and watch the player lives. And when you get hit, it will go down, and once it's 0, it will finally get destroyed. Okay, so next thing. And actually, guys, once you got that, let me go ahead and just do that real quick. So I guess for you guys who are cheaters out there, if you don't want to attempt it on your own. Give me 1 second. Oh boy, what am I doing? Okay, player lives 3. We're going to, if it goes, we're going to do player lives minus. Alright, and the if statement, guys, is going to look like this if you haven't done it yet on your own. If player lives is less than 1, guys, that means if it's 0, then we're going to destroy the object. Go ahead and save it. Okay, go ahead and run it, and this is what we should have. Look in the player view and inspector, and you'll see player lives is 3, but when I hit an object, it's 2, 1, 0, and then the player destroys. Okay, so now you have our object destroyed. So we're done with the player lives section. So now we need to move on to the scoring. So how does the score system work? We need to create a score system now. So basically, for a score system to work, we need to declare another variable. So in player, go ahead and declare, oh, I don't know why I did that. In player, go ahead and declare a new variable called score, or you can name whatever you want, player score or score. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just use score. So you're going to do public int score, and the default value is going to be 0. You can just set to 0. It'd be easier. So public int score, right, set to 0. You have that. Alright, now what we need to do. So we have a public game object score. Now what do we want to happen? How do we gain points? So this method down here in the player script says that if the enemy collides with the player, then the player gets destroyed. So obviously we don't want to add points there. When we shoot, right? When we shoot, there's an object that comes out of us, a projectile or a laser. And when the laser hits an enemy, the enemy gets destroyed. So I'm assuming that's when we want to add points, right? So ideally, what we want to do is in the laser script, guys, go in the laser one or your projectile, whatever you called it. Okay, and we'll look at the onTrigger here, because actually it's not doing anything. You'll notice that our lasers don't destroy itself. So let's go ahead and add a collider for that while we're at it. Remember, guys, to do that, you're going to do collider dot game object, and then we want to get the compare tag of what component in the hierarchy. When the laser hits the enemy, okay, when the laser hits the enemy, make sure it's an if statement, guys, true or false. Okay, so if the projectile or the laser hits the enemy, what do we want to happen to the projectile? It's simple. We want to destroy, right? Destroy this dot game object, or you can do game object, doesn't matter. Okay, cool. So we have destroy, right? Now, what about, trying to think here. So for our player score, guys, okay, so now if the laser gets, so now this says that if the laser hits the enemy, we want to destroy this. But now we also have a variable called score, and we want to be able to increment that by, say, 50 points per hit, right? However enemies there are, you add 50 points for every kill. So in order to do this, guys, we have to do like an increment type thing. So the best way to do this is going to be, trying to think here. Okay, so ideally, we're in a new script, guys. I don't know if you've read another tutorial video about this, or you know about classes, or you know about get component, but there's a real simple way to do this. So what we want to do here is we want to take the score function from the player, and we want to add, this is the add symbol for incrementing. We want to increment the score by 50 points, okay? But there's a reason why this alone won't work. We didn't declare this variable in the laser script. We actually declared it in the player script, and there's two ways you can do this. One way is to declare a private variable that's known as player, which grabs the player script, and then you can, in the start function or create an awake function, you can declare that that variable equals get component and then the name of the script, and it allows you to use all the public variables in that script. But we don't need all the public variables. We just need one variable. So let me show you how you can do that with just one variable. Go back into your player script, and you'll see the public int score, okay? Go ahead and make that public static int score. Okay, this basically means that that static means that basically it's not going anywhere, okay? It allows us that that score is only a part of the player class. It's only part of player. So we're gonna go ahead and make it static. And the magic of Unity lets us do this, and programming in general. What we can do is now actually just call it. Do player, okay? And by the way, guys, you'll see sometimes when you do functions, it will say player, or for a good one's going to be rendering when we do it. It has capital R and lowercase r. The capital R is a class, while the lowercase r is a variable. So you're going to do player dot score, and that's going to add 50 points. Okay, so now we want to basically, when we shoot these things, we get 50 points, but you also know it's static. It's not going to show in the hierarchy. For whatever reason, it's just not going to show. So in order to get to show, guys, we need to go into our player, and we're going to print it. Okay, so go into player and go into the update function. And there's a function called print, which allows you to view the values of inputs, or what's on the screen, or a variable. So we're going to go here inside our update method, and you're going to type in the function called print. And then what we want to do is print. You want to print. Let's see. You want to print player lives plus score. That's it. Now, if you just do it like this, guys, you're going to get just a 2-digit number. You're going to get 3 and 0. All right. So we need to actually add quotes so we can describe it. So you go ahead and string lives, and then put a colon and a space, and then player lives, and then you want to do plus space, you put 2 spaces, and then put score, okay, score, colon, and then space, another one, and then plus score. And what this says is that lives, and then it's going to print lives, and then it's going to score, and then it's going to give us our score. So when we go ahead and save this, and actually, hold on, guys, what am I missing? Print. Oh, whoops! Right here, guys. Remember, you have to have your plus signs in the correct places. Okay, cool. So we're good there. And now let's go ahead and do this. And you'll see on the bottom left, you have lives are 3 and score is 0. And okay, hold on. Lives are 3, score is 0. And when you hit something, your score is now 50. And when I get hit, lives are 2. Lives are 1. Lives are 0. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the enemy right now isn't destroying itself. When the enemy collides with the player, it's not destroying itself. So we want the enemy to destroy itself, so it doesn't just go straight through the player. So here's what you do: you go into the player, and in here you have the collider for if the enemy hits the player gets destroyed. So we have to actually go into the enemy script here, and you have if collider is the laser. Destroy the enemy. But now we want if the collider of the and if the collider is the game object of enemy, alright, and then compare tag enemy. So if the enemy collides with the player, sorry, don't do enemy, do player. We're in the enemy script. If collider player Okay, if the enemy collides with the player, guys, we want the enemy to destroy itself. So you would do destroy this .game object. Okay. If player.game object type player script, yeah. Okay, good. And we need. Sorry, guys. You should always get in the habit of using brackets. I didn't there. Okay. So there you go. So now let's go ahead and run that and make sure it works. We know our score system works and our live system. The bullets work, the bullets are depleting, and when we hit, okay, hold on. Alright, when we get hit, we're not dying. So give me 1 second here. When the enemy hits the player, if collide.game to create player, and we're in the enemy script. Oh, you know what, guys? I had this problem earlier. Okay, here's why it's not working. Go and click on your player in the inspector. Okay? We're calling the player tag, but if you'll notice, guys, the tag up here in the inspector, under where it says player, it says untagged. Give it the tag player, and then try it. Okay, now when it hits us, damn. We have 1 life, we have 0 life, and now it gets destroyed. And when it hits us, we don't get any points. We only get points if the laser hits the enemy. So far, guys, you have a score system, you have your live system. The next thing is next thing we're going to do, guys, is you'll notice that, I'm sorry, hold on. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, guys, is you'll notice that when the enemies hit us, we lose a life, but we don't know it. Like, we don't flash or we don't do anything unless we have no lives, and then we just disappear entirely. So how do we make it to where it looks like we died for a second? We're going to introduce a new method that's built into Unity called time.time. In the past, we've used time.delta-time, which is basically slowing things down to real standard life. Like 3,600 seconds is an hour, so we can go 50 miles per hour with time.delta-time. With time.time, it's actually frame rates that the game is going in. So I'm going to show you guys the method here, and I'm going to explain this as best as I can. It's very complicated and confusing at first, but you'll get it once we start. So go ahead and open up your player class, guys, and you're going to introduce a new method here. And give me 1 second. Alright, 1 second, guys. Hold on. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to create a new method, and it's going to be called timer, okay? It's going to be a float because that's what game frames are in. They're not just integer digits. They're milliseconds. So we're going to use a float here, and we're going to go with float, just write float, not public or private. When you don't do private or anything like that, it just stays private. It's going to be used only within this script. So you're going to do float timer is equal to 0f. Alright, and we use f because it's a float. So we have float timer equals 0f. We're just declaring this variable because we're gonna change this value of 0. Alright, because we're gonna use it for when once our player gets hit, we want it to reappear after X amount of seconds. Or frame rates, or ideally seconds. So we have that. Now what we need to do is we need to go down here where it says if the collider is equal to the game of the enemy, what happens when the enemy hits the player? So far we have player lives subtracts by 1. We subtract the player life, and then if the player lives is less than 1, it equals destroy. So now what we actually want to do, guys, is we want to keep this if statement, but we also want it to subtract the life, and then we want to do this. We have render, and you'll see here we have 2 renders, render with a capital R, render with a lowercase r. Like I said before, guys, the capital R is the class renderer, and then this is the variable, okay? So we want to call the variable render, and then we want to .enable, and we want to set it to false. Now if you go ahead and run this, guys, what it's going to do is as soon as you get hit, it's just going to turn the rendering off, and then your game object will be invisible for the rest of the time. So how do we set it back on? We want to set it onwards. So once it goes false, after say maybe 0.5 seconds, we want it to turn on. So here's what you do. We're going to use our timer function now. Timer, okay, equals time.time. Alright, and then just go ahead and do that. Now, time.time, guys, basically says this. So we're not calling time.time or timer until the game object, until the enemy hits our player. And once it does, it calls this method here, which is timer, and timer equals time.time. Time.time says this. Time.time is basically from the start of the game. And actually, let's go ahead and just look at what the Unity reference says. Unity3D time.time. And you'll see here in the scripting reference, okay, the time this frame has started. This is the time in seconds since the start of the game. So ideally, what that means, guys, is say we start the game, and then after like say 60 seconds, you finally get hit by the enemy. Okay? Timer equals time.time, which is now 60 seconds. This got called at 60 seconds. So now this equals 60 seconds. So timer is equal to 60 seconds. Now what we need to do is figure out how to make it reappear in X amount of time. So what we want to do is we want to make a update function. So you're going to go up to here in the update function, guys, and you're going to create a new if statement. Actually, I'm going to do it above the print. It's easier. So you're going to do an if statement. Okay, and we want to do if time.time, okay, which is the current time. It's gonna constantly get the current time of the game. So say once we start the game, it starts at 1, and then once it finally gets called in the collision function when the enemy hits the player, then it's called at say 30. So what we want to do is if time.time minus timer is greater than 1. Alright, and don't freak out, guys, I'm going to explain it. So, like I said, guys, as soon as we start the game, this is in the update function. Update function gets updated every frame. So what's happening is it's calculating the start of the game. So after 30 seconds, this equals 30. And then say at 32 seconds, right? At 32 seconds, you finally get hit by the enemy. Now this equals 2. Okay, this is 2 seconds. So this equals 30 and this equals 2. 32, so this is 30 minus, minus 2. 30 minus 2 is 28, and then 28 is greater than 1. Okay, and we have, and this is going to be a little complicated, guys, and I'm going to show you how you can actually visualize this. It will make more sense once we do it. So once that timer is greater than 1 unit, we want to set the render dot enabled equal to true. Okay. And once we do that, guys, let me go ahead and show you. And actually, here's what we're going to do as well, guys. You have in your print function, because this will explain it better, and you'll be able to watch this video first if you'd like. This is going to be very complicated, but trust me, this will make it so much easier to explain. We're going to go ahead and put a bunch of spaces here, and we're going to say, here we're going to say current time, okay? Current time plus time.time, okay? And then what we want to do, current time, hold on. Alright, so we have our current time, which is going to display the current time of the game. Alright, and then we have our timer that we want to display. Timer to respond. Timer to respond. Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and give this a shot. Alright, and now watch my screen, guys, because it's going to explain it all. So watch what happens first when we get hit by the enemy. We turn blank, and then we reappear, and we lost a life. Now here's how this works, guys. I'm going to go ahead and do this frame per frame, actually. Let's go ahead and start it, and then... Okay, guys, current time says the game has been running for 0.5 seconds. Timer to respond is set to 0. Now let's go ahead and go to the next frame. I actually don't know how to use this function. Okay, now look at the look at the current time now. The game has been running for 1 second. The timer is set to 0. So let's let the game run for 5 seconds. Oh, sorry guys, I deleted it. Okay. Hold on. Game's been running for 3 seconds. Game's been running for 4 seconds. Okay. The game has now been running, guys, for 5 seconds. So I'm going to get under one of them right now. Okay. I'm about to get hit by an object, guys. The current time is 8.7 seconds. Watch what happens. 8.9 seconds. I'm trying to slow it down as much as I can before I get hit. Okay. We're about to collide with the object. We're at 9.2 seconds. Watch what happens to the timer to respond. Okay. The game has been running for 9.24 seconds on impact of collision. And what we want to do is we want to make the timer respond greater than 1. And I'm pretty sure I just confused you there. But watch. So right now the current time is at 9.43 and the timer to respond is at 9.24. The greater than 1 is basically saying this. Open up your player script. And if you look, the current time is 9.4, which would ideally be going right here. 9.4 minus 9.24, okay, which is actually 0.2. Is 0.2 greater than 1? No. So what it does is when the timer gets, when current time gets to greater than 1, then our neighborly becomes true. So watch what happens in slow motion when it goes greater than 1. Okay, when it gets to 10.24, we're going to respond. 10.09, 10.25. See that? Now we respond because we're greater than 1 whole unit in time. And that's our respawn. If you made it 2, it would wait till we're 2 whole frame units ahead of the timer to respond. And then we respawn. Okay? If that didn't make sense, guys, please rewatch this part or ask questions and I can try and answer as best as I can. But I figured displaying the current time and the timer to respond makes the perfect sense. So ideally, guys, I believe this wraps up our game. And real quickly, let's just go ahead and create an onGUI function. Because right now we have points. You'll see my score is 100. We want to get everything on the screen now. So what we got to do is go ahead and just create a new script here. Create C#. It's going to be an onGUI function. If you watched my, you can call it my GUI. I'm just going to call it my GUI. If you watched my second tutorial video, it talks about GUI and labels and boxes. I recommend go watch it. If not, you're about to do it here. You can go ahead and erase all this crap, guys. It's not important. What we want to do is create the void onGUI. Remember, it has to be spelled exactly like I am on the screen here. It's capital O, lowercase n, and then capital GUI. Boom. And inside, we're going to make a new box. So you can do GUI, go ahead and create a box, give it a new rectangle. Give it a string there. Okay. So remember, it's we're gonna do. So I'm gonna do. You guys can do whatever thing you want. You can mess around with it, but I'm gonna do 50 from the 50 from the left, 50 from the top, and to avoid any errors, I'm gonna do 1,000 width, and I'm gonna do 100 height. And then for this here, I am going to do for this. I'm gonna add the score. So we're gonna have our score there, and then. Here's how we're also, remember guys, we made score a static variable so we can actually call it to this function. So we have score and then we want to take player.score and it's going to display the score there. Alright, we also want to do what? We also want our lives. So you're going to do lives and then you're going to do plus player.player lives. Okay, and you're gonna notice something that you're gonna have an error because remember guys, in player, your player lives isn't a static variable. So go ahead and make it public static int player lives. Go ahead and save everything. Go back into your GUI class, player lives, and when you're finished, go ahead and attach your my GUI to your camera. And now you have score 0, lives 3. When I hit one. When one collides with me, my lives is 2. Let's go ahead and get 100 points because that's all that remains. 50 points. 100 points. Bam. And that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. I apologize it took so long. This is probably a really long video, and I hope I explained some things correctly. The only thing new is really the time.time, but you know, we'll go from there. Thanks a lot, guys.